Do I have a choice? I don't even know what to say.
Mhm.
You still have my card? Hello, you there? Huh? See, you still have my card. Yeah. You have it? Okay. Jacob, 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 listen to me. You listening? Okay. When you're ready to listen, let me know. Which is what? Ready to listen to me now? I want to tell you something when you can call me. Yeah, I think so, maybe. Maybe one night. Okay, great, so I'll look for that tomorrow. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I'll look at that one. So much. Hey.
Yeah, there's some over here. Just find an empty spot. Yes, just find, as long as there's no wedding name or title on the side of it, you should be fine. Just look for the car wipe off the. All right,
Mr. Sergeant.
all right. Hey, all is well? Through white Jesus, we should all make it.
You need PowerPoint, right?
Yeah,
Good.
I,
Set up. Smart, set that up.
I wouldn't go so far as to, I'm using a PowerPoint, but I wouldn't call it a PowerPoint. It's just,
It will be projected.
yeah. I actually have some, video clips I want to play.
On the screen.
As well, yes.
Awesome.
Cool.
That's right.
Somebody get up and get.
If anyone comes on, I'll just tell them, go to live. To
How you gonna-
UB live.
Are you gonna,
How am I
set the
going to-
camera on the screen or?
No.
Day of our Blue Flamingo Literary Festival. I'm here to introduce the speaker, Dr. Ian Strachan, who should be well known to you, but let's have a reminder of what he does here. So Dr. Ian Strachan is full professor in the School of English Studies, campus president of the University of the Bahamas North, and executive vice president of the University of the Bahamas. He's well known as an outstanding educator. Yet in the context of the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival, it is his role as a literary artist that I want to remind us of. Reviewing his record, it is no wonder that for the 50th anniversary of Bahamian independence, he was listed among our 50 most important cultural icons. He's a poet, having published the collection Silk, Cotton, Soul, as well as others. His forays into filmmaking have given us the documentaries Show Me Your Emotion, The Ring Play Games of the Bahamas, 1996, and Eyes Man, Manhood in the Bahamas from 2013. We should not forget the drama and comedy of his Bahamian soap opera, Gippy's Kingdom. He's a novelist, author of God's Angry Babies, 1997, and his most recent book, Blind Days, which was published in the fall. Yet it is as a playwright that Ian is probably the happiest, and it is through the spectacle of live drama that he directs audiences to consider some of the most urgent and deeply rooted issues of Bahamian culture. For example, his 1999 play, Diary of Souls, is a haunting critique of xenophobia and anti-Haitian animus, while 2015's Gun Boys Rhapsody examines youth violence and its impact on Bahamian communities. I'm certain that his address tonight, Bitters for the Soul, will challenge us and edify us. Please welcome him to the stage.
I really wish I could sit and give this talk. Thank you so much for this very, very kind invitation. And I'm honored to be here with you. And I hope that I will have something interesting to say. What I think I'll do today is talk a little bit more about how I became what I became as a writer and why I'm preoccupied with things I am preoccupied with. And I'll read a little poetry. I will read a little bit from the novel, and then I'll probably show one or two clips from my television projects. So the title of my talk is Bitters for the Soul, but I have to admit, I really wanted it to be Bitters for the Soul of a Nation, but I figured I'd just go with the shorter version, Bitters for the Soul. And yeah, everybody knows what bitters are, right? Everybody's familiar. Everybody has had bitters before, right? Christine, you ain't had no bitters. Stop lying. You don't know what we talking about. In your cocktail? Right? So, you know, in the Bahamian context, that stuff it's medicine, right? Cersei in particular, which just this week I just spontaneously went in my backyard and grabbed off the fence, boiled for my sons who were both sick and missing school. And aloes too, if you ever put that to your lips. That's an experience. What I find so interesting is that these herbal medicines, which go way back and are with us, they taste so bad, but they're so good for you. And then I contrast that to sugar, which is the reason many of our ancestors became slaves in the first place. And what it leads to, dementia, obesity, diabetes. It's interesting how the bitter is good for you and the sweet, not so much. And so I just wanted to think about my own journey as a writer from the lens of pain and suffering, from the lens of suffering in my own life, and how I don't really know. I suppose that makes, you know, it's a weird sort of thing to say, but I don't know how I become the writer I became. I don't know why I would care about the things I care about if I hadn't, and if my family hadn't suffered the things we suffered. And so I guess what I'm going to do to begin is to just share some of my origin story, if you will, some information about my family. Before I do that, this is not going to be a religious experience, but I always love this verse from Ecclesiastes, these verses from Ecclesiastes. It's better to go to the house of mourning and to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. And in my mind, in doing this talk, I wanted to play Bob Marley's Talking Blues as my introduction, but I knew someone was going to introduce me. So I just want you to think about, here, Bob, talking blues, your feet is just too big for your shoes. And so, yeah, I'll just tell you a little bit about my family life. This is my father and mother, both are deceased. They were married for 17 years. And it was a fruitful, though ultimately bad marriage. My father was abusive, and my mother told all sorts of stories during my childhood about my father. None of them were good. And she had a habit. Her name was Senorita Gloriana Moss Strachan. She became a Strachan, and my father's name is Tracy Watts Strachan. And whenever the children, the six of us, I was the youngest, whenever one of her children did something bad, selfish, or mean, she would say, yeah, use Tracy, child. And so I grew up with a certain view of my father. I didn't actually know him. My mother left him when I was 3 years old. I would say now, in hindsight, she fled. And she took the six of us to Jamaica, where she went to study at the University of the West Indies. And she told me how she emptied the house, and he didn't even know the house was empty. And she also told me how they were both educators. He was a school principal in Cal Island, she was a teacher, and he basically collected her pay for a year and never gave her a cent. So it was on my mother's last day. I remember she said to me, because I was at the time I was in the middle of a bad breakup, and I guess she was a little bit puzzled as to why I was taking it so hard. And she said, I never had anybody love me. It was one of the last things she said. So she lived with a broken heart. But this is a good moment for her. This is the day she graduated from the University of the West Indies with her degree. My mother was denied the opportunity to go to government high school. She was born in True Blue, Crooked Island. And my grandfather, H.D. Moss, didn't think women needed an education. So she wasn't allowed to come to New Providence and study. So she taught herself, sat her O-levels. She used to say to me that she was 9 months pregnant with me when she sat the A-level in history. So I guess maybe I owe some of her, I owe a little bit of my love for history to her. And this was us. This was 5 of us on our last day in Jamaica, August of 1975. And I'm the little one sitting on the fence. Those are 3 of my brothers. And this is my oldest brother, Winston. Winston once said to my father, if you hit my mother again, I'm going to kill you. And he eventually became a crack addict, died of HIV. And watching him fall apart, watching him lose his mind, become an addict, and not knowing how to help him was a very influential experience for me. So he didn't live to be 40. I think he was 38 when he died. And I distinctly remember an occasion when my 2 oldest brothers fought in the kitchen over the two of them this is us and Andres. They're the two on either end. Fought in the kitchen over a cup. And Winston pulled a knife and tried to kill my brother Kenneth over a cup. So and then Kenneth eventually died of brain cancer. So a lot of tragedy, a lot of violence. I grew up in a house where I didn't really feel safe. I felt loved by my mother, but I never felt like we were safe once Winston started to unravel. And it was also a house where there was unintentional neglect. I want to say that. Unintentional neglect, because my mother had to work day and night. And it was also a house where there was never enough food. Yeah, never enough food. I look back and I for a long time in my life, I thought I was just a weird kid who liked how mud tasted. I remember, I would eat mud in Jamaica. And then maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I started thinking about it. I said, wait a minute. I was actually hungry. It's weird how your life comes back to you and your ability to apprehend certain things in your life change. When my brother Kenneth died, second oldest, I wrote my mother this poem. Some of you might know. It's called Gloriana. I'll read it. Here is sorrow enough for 10 tales times 10. And yet this woman, this silk cotton tree of a soul, rejoices more in her life with each salt moon. Here is a night so deep and wide it swallows song, but my mother shuttles an alto thread of gold through sackcloth dawns. Men raise stiff statues and scowling monuments in their own memories. They order lines composed, so children never cease to trumpet each trick and triumph. But what if I said that this Black woman, far from history's iridescence, possessing no territories nor treasure chests, save her soul, has been a sun lighting worlds? Where are the epics for our Black mothers? When do we print dollar bills and emboss them with the faces of the Saracen sistren who saved our souls? Hair is burden enough to leave backs brittle, pain enough to snap the voice's cord, salt enough to suck the sea fresh. And yet, Gloriana stands, guiding the dying, guarding the living, with knees which will not buckle and a voice that does not break. Black woman, how many rescues must you perform? Black woman, how many of your sons must you put in earth? Black woman, how many times must you sow without reaping? Mother, sister, friend, how many trips to the throne of grace must you make for your children? These men seeking national heroes and African kings, do they have Black mothers? The kind that eat fire and pass ice for picnic? Let them look to the dark figures holding the church up at the four corners. Let them look to the ones who will wipe the spittle from their mouths if Papa Death sneezes. This poem says, I have seen what you have borne in God's name. This poem says, I see what it has all cost in tears and silent nights of the owl and the rat. Black mother of mine saying prayers in the four corners to make hell a home. Black mother of mine riding the crest of syphilitic seas. Black mother of mine singing anthems in aborted dawns and vile rains. Black mother of mine knowing too well the Babylon boots, the hustlers and the whores. Black mother of mine, look at me growing in the beams of your life. I carry you in me, woman. I see what it has all cost in tears and silent nights, in sorrow enough for 10 tales times 10, in nights deep and wide enough to swallow song. I hear you singing, mother of mine. I hear you singing above the cradle, above the grave. I have seen what it has cost. I have marked this life of iron you have forged, of rainbows spun out of sackcloth dawns. I thank creation for your silk cotton soul. And then years later, I wrote another poem that I don't think I've ever publicly read. I'm not sure, for my mother. It's never been published, called Praying Warrior Woman. Her gift was fighting fire. The kind of fire that when you walked through it, you wasn't the same size no more. You got bigger, breathed deeper, saw clearer, because you died somewhere in that flame and came out the other side, alive and kicking. She wasn't scared of flames, had been burned alive, burned to death, and crossed over so many damn times her fingertips sparked. Me? I like water. Yes, that's Senorita Gloriana in her prime. So this is not me. This is my brother Trevor. This is my father and mother in, I think that's Fresh Creek, Andros. They were teachers, so they traveled quite a bit. And as I mentioned to you, my mother really didn't share good stories about my dad. And I didn't have a good relationship with him. I don't really have a memory of him until I was 8 years old. So when we went to Jamaica in 1972, and we came back, we went to Andros, and we came back as a family to Nassau in 1977. My mother introduced me to my father, but it was like I was meeting him for the first time. I had no memory of him at all. And I'm pretty sure my anti-authoritarian orientation has something to do with my hatred of my father, which it's changed the older I got and the more wicked I became. But when my mother died, we were only left with him. So we tried. And in his own way, because his mother died. I'm also a Wilshcombe. My father, his father's Milo Strachan. He married a Wilshcombe from West End. My father was actually born in West End, Grand Bahama. And there's cancer in that family. And that's what my brother Kenneth died from. And Kenneth was his favorite. Kenneth, despite the separation, would visit my dad, would spend time with him, brought his son Kenny to go see his grandfather. And Kenny's birthday is Kenny the son, the little one. My brother Kenneth's son, Kendrick. His birthday is November 13th. And how can I put this? In the year that my nephew Kenny turned 20, my brother Kenneth had been dead 10 years. And on November 13th, my father came to our house. Or maybe I spoke to him on the phone. I can't remember. But this poem describes the exchange I have with my father. It's called November 13th. You have lived long enough to surprise me. I call you father. There on the phone, silence, no crying, just silence. Kenny is 20 today, you said. His father died exactly 10 years ago, you said. And then silence. Silence I had to fill with consolations. How I hated you. You have lived long enough to surprise me. Your son is gone 10 years. Your grandson doesn't call. Is all this pain recompense? How will you find an answer for the years? How can I be a father who has an answer for the years? You have lived long enough to surprise me. And I wrote this poem about my brother Winston, who was a Gemini like me, and 6'3", 6'4", athlete, Carifta gold medalist, and he hit every single one of his siblings. Violent. violent, and scary. One time he picked me up by the neck. He did this, he grabbed me by the neck, he just lifted me up in the air. I don't remember what I did to annoy him. I tried not to do it again. But he died of HIV, and he was, he became a shriveled, weak person, the person who was so strong and so impressive and so dangerous. So I wrote this poem for him. It's called The Man in the Bed. We still don't talk about these things. We still don't talk about crack. We still don't talk about AIDS. Yeah, we have issues in this country. The man in the bed. And we don't talk about all the people who got rich. Selling cocaine and representing cocaine dealers. I'll leave that there. The man in the bed. Is a man a strong, tall tree, his arms branches that shade the little ones? His legs bold black trunks that laugh at wind? Is a man a strong, tall tree, his arms branches that give fruit to the little ones? His legs bold black trunks you can lean on and rest? Is a man a strong, tall tree, his arms branches that give fruit to the little ones, his legs bold black trunks you can lean on and rest? Close your eyes against the scowling sun? Yes? Yes. Then who is this in this dying bed? All right. So I have gotten a lot of inspiration from pain, a lot of inspiration from grief. Suffering humbles you and opens you up, opens up your soul. Pain wakes you up. Pleasure puts you to sleep. That's been my experience. I make very few good decisions in the interest of pleasure. But yeah, as I said, I grew up in a house where there was unintentional neglect, where there was violence. We all were on top of each other, hating each other a little bit, and definitely unsafe. And I also grew up bullied. So bullied in my house, bullied in my neighborhood, and bullied at school because my mother left, as I said, fled the Bahamas and took us all to Jamaica. You can imagine the spectacle of this Black woman with 6 children. I had to start school at 3 in grade 1. So I ended up therefore being always way too young for the grade I was in, and not on the same level of maturity as my classmates. But then I was also bookish, right? So not good. And I went, because when my father and mother were married, my siblings went to private schools like Queens College and St. John's. And then when they separated, the rest of us, the last 3, went to public schools. So I went to all public schools. I went to Columbus Primary, C.W. Sawyer, C.H. Reeves, Government High School. And I mean by Government High, Yellow Elder High, not the Government High School. I shouldn't call it Yellow Elder High. I'm proud of Government High, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. And 2 things public school taught me. One is all the rules of toxic masculinity. And the other is to understand that my people hate intellectuals. So that's, yeah. So navigating that, like, you understand the sensibility of the working class. But I remember I was once so bold as to tell Felix Bethel, the late Felix Bethel, that, I went to Government High, I went to public school, and I am, I had a working class upbringing. He's like, no, Strachan, no. You weren't like them. And he's right, because of course he knew my parents, who were both university educated. So you go to school with them, but that doesn't mean you are really one of them. But one thing it did teach me all of this was to have a certain sensitivity for the underdog and for the oppressed. And so here's my big pronouncement, and it's not going to be that novel a pronouncement, but it is my philosophy, definitely my philosophy. I've just shared very personal poetry with you, things that are really about my losses. But most of what I have written, and I think actually, no, I should say this. When I use the poetic form, I use it to write about love, to write about loss, mostly. But when I write plays and when I write novels, I'm being political. I want to talk to the nation. I want to essentially use art in that context as a prophetic action. I am not saying I am holy. I am not saying that I am saintly. What I'm saying is that there's an element of the prophetic in the role of the artist in a society like ours, or at least there should be. And that what I saw myself and still see myself aiming to do is to name the evil that I see, to honor the oppressed. The last time I gave a talk here, I talked about that I write about losing, and I do. But I want to honor the losers. Because what is the glory in winning when the game was rigged? Right? And so a lot of what I try to do is also to theatricalize the cruelty and the injustice and the violence in the system. And to quote a student, as I said I would, I refuse to spare the wicked the truth. I refuse to spare the powerful the truth. And we should never do that. And you'd be surprised to know, or maybe not, there's almost no public space where you are not punished for doing that, resented for doing that. So, yeah, this notion that the Bahamas is paradise, it's actually an obscene notion, right? Because the truth is, because what it does is it mystifies and confuses Bahamian people so they don't have an actual healthy historical consciousness. We have a problematic relationship with the truth. Now, it's interesting because America also has a problematic relationship with the truth. And right now, it's not interested in its own history. It is actively trying to suppress stories that tell the truth, right? Banning books, etc., talking about, hating race theory and all the rest of it. We are interesting. We don't even have to ban it. There's not even a need for some conservative group of people to prohibit us from knowing. We don't want to know. Right? We don't want to know. We are consciously, voluntarily, willingly forgetting, which is a survival tactic. Okay, it's a survival mechanism. It's a way of adapting. Yeah. You're adopting. I'm trying to put a positive spin on it. No, but it's certainly evolutionary in some way. The Bahamian version of the 21st century Black person is interesting, right? Of course, there was a time in this country where there was a real Black. Marcus Garvey visited the Bahamas. There were Black Garveyites. There was a time, of course, parallel to the civil rights movement when there was a clear Black consciousness in this country and that there was an agenda, right? It seems that did the work it was supposed to, apparently, and now that's been retired, right? But juxtapose the mythology of paradise, the machinery of paradise and plantation, the idea fabrication with this fundamental truth. Every nation is built on blood. Every nation. And maintained through violence. Every nation. Even one that doesn't own any missiles. Even one that doesn't have a standing army. It's still maintained through violence. And that is very, very troublesome piece of truth, right? But it is still the truth. So in our country, the party and parliamentary system plays the role of containing progressivism, the revolutionary impulse, and legitimizing inequality. The education system, the church, and our constitution reproduce plantation, carry out containment, legitimize inequality. Right. So yeah, I have tried to address this, and I'm going to read a little bit from my novel now. And the whole project of this novel, again, is still, even though it's looking backward, prophetic. That's the ambition. It is a prophetic ambition. Let me put it that way. Whether I achieve it or not, I leave to other people to decide. But it is to trouble this tranquility, this sleep that we're in. I talked about early, pain waking you and pleasure doing what? Putting you to sleep. And tourism is a pleasure industry, right? You got to be asleep to do it well. So, the more I think about, okay, so, I remember there's this moment in my life, I traveled to Haiti. I was doing research for Dire Souls. I went to Haiti and I walked into a bar, and in the bar, there was this paper mache bust, and it was a bust of Dessalines. I thought about it. Right in this bar, I mean, it's just a bar. And I thought about the fact that there's so much illiteracy in Haiti because there's just not access to education like there should be. But that the history is known. Their story is known. You cannot hide it from them. You cannot take it from them. They own it. Orally, they own it, right? We not only don't have it orally, we don't read it either, right? So this is meant to be an intervention, so that we can come to understand who we really are, where we really come from, how we got here. But most of all, I am now thinking, now that I'm going to be 55 this year, what is this really about? This is not about what, I'll put it this way. I am more interested in a conversation, not about what was done to my people, as I am more interested in what I owe the people it was done to, and what they left me as a legacy, right? What I inherit, and what I have the responsibility to take care of as a result of what they went through. So I'm going to read this a little bit. Day 8, July 29, 1826, still on this, hopefully connecting to this theme that I have presented you with of bitters for the soul of a nation. Day 8, July 29, 1826. Every night at the same time, the frogs would start talking. In July, the sun took longer to set. And just when it seemed to be gone for good, those frogs would start up, celebrating the cool, Kate thought. One, then another, until 4 or 5 of them were going back and forth. No rain. Still they talked. Kate hated the sound the frogs made, like pieces of wood creaking under a weight or rubbing together or a stick running along a stone wall. She didn't know what to say it was most like. She would picture the bulbous black eyes and the pale heads of those skinny frogs sitting on the white rocks or on the brown ones hiding on the tree bark. Every night at the same time, the frogs would start. Kate had been in the stalks now for 8 long days and nights. She'd reached the point where she was starting to feel she only had a little bit of sense left, where her pain was like a constant burning, like there was a fire in her back, in her neck, in her shoulder, in her knees that would never stop. She felt sure she was going to die soon, and she didn't mind the feeling. But while she was still here amongst the living, she still wanted to learn a thing or two from the few people left she thought had anything worthwhile to say, who deserved to be listened to. Kate considered Harriet one of those persons. She wanted to know why the woman was locked up in here with her anyways. And all these days, she was too proud to ask. She was ready to ask now. You ain't tell me why you in here, all this talking you do. You better let me tell you now, because I most believe me and John Boy believe in you tomorrow. Harriet gave a grin and then shook her head as if she was trying to shake something out of her hair. I hear them talking. I'm happy for you, Harriet, and for you, John Boy. John Boy smiled. Every day he asked Kate if she wasn't ready to leave the sailor so he could be her man. She laughed a little despite her pain. You're too young for me, John Boy. His mother hadn't come to talk to him yet. It always made him feel worse when she was long in coming. You know, you can leave too anytime you're ready, Harriet said. But you won't apologize to these bucker and promise to cover them melons. Kate sucked her teeth. Miss Kate, you should do what Miss Harriet say so we could all come out of here. Then I could build you a nice shop. Harriet laughed. Boy, you don't give up. That's sweet, John Boy. Very sweet, Kate said, smiling sadly. You can be a strong, brave man one day, but I most believe they ain't gonna never set me loose. Don't say that, Miss Kate, John Boy pleaded. It's all right, Kate said, as reassuringly as she could. Anyways, Harriet, I know exactly what John Boy do to get stuck in you. What about you? She didn't skip a beat. They got me here because I tried to kill my baby. A horrible silence filled the barn. Only the frogs outside could be heard. Kate was stunned. Finally, she gathered up the nerve. Why you do that? If you love somebody, you wouldn't protect them, Kate? Harriet asked. Of course, with all I have inside me. They could barely see each other. There were dark shapes in the barn. I know you would, sugar girl. Of course you would. There was so much tenderness in Harriet's voice just then. I don't understand, said Kate genuinely. Well, I love my child too. I love my child, I do. I carry it in my belly. I push it out by my lonesome. I cut the cord. And I hold her in my arms like I know my mama hold me in her hands. Just then, tears filled her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The tears fell heavily down her face. She couldn't speak. Several moments passed. It was John Boy who spoke. But it's your baby, Harriet. It is? There was something new in the voice of the large, dark form that was Harriet. A bitterness, a clarity. That's not what Bucker say. Bucker say it's theirs. All the babies what ain't yet born too. They say they own them and plan to make them slave for them day and night. Plan to whip them and chain them and put them in stocks. Plan to sell them and handle them like goat and chicken. No damn better, no damn worse. Kate felt something swelling inside while Harriet spoke as she did, and her own eyes filled with tears. Didn't you want to keep it? I did want to keep my baby, sugar girl. I did. I hold her all night and I kiss her and I cry, sugar girl. I cry because I think about how they just do us, and I decide to protect my baby. I decide to send her back to the world of spirits where she come from. I decide to set her free. She wasn't never gonna be no slave. She wasn't never gonna wait for boss man and missus. Slaving was gonna end with me. And the 3 rebels spent their last night together, each in tears, wishing for another world, another way for things to be, listening to the frogs celebrate the dew. Yes. So it was quite the experience discovering that the Cade Moss I learned of in Gail's history book was not alone in her captivity, not alone in her punishment in that barn. That with her was a little boy who ran away, and with her was a woman who tried to kill a baby. And opportunity there to make real for myself and hopefully for the reader the magnitude of such an incredible decision as I think about how much I love my own sons and how I would lay my life down for any of them, to try to imagine such a sober decision. Such a revolutionary decision. Right? So yeah, I this has been an interesting journey, and I hope that my people will be open to sitting with the uncomfortable feelings that come with the knowledge that we were slaves. And that though we have gained majority rule and nationhood, things are still not quite what one would expect. Because we are still serving, and we are still subordinate, and we are still on the margin, and we are still, you know, how can I put it? We're still not equal in some very serious ways. And then we turn around looking for someone else to treat like nigger. Because that's what we know. So when I have arrived, when I got my own nigger, right? I've arrived when I got my own nigger. And so in the midst of a project trying to make people laugh, I also have tried to tell stories that can move my fellow citizens and prick their conscience a little bit. So even in Gippy's Kingdom, which honestly was about having fun, I tried to weave in some messages. And so this is an example of that. This scene from Gippy's Kingdom.
Hey, Daddy, where you going?
I going home?
Home. Where you live?
I live in Southern Street.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You have your papers? What's your name?
Gilbert Pulling.
Yeah? You got papers, Gilbert? Gilbert, right?
Yes, I have to I live my home.
I don't think you got no papers, you know. I think you're lying to me, man.
That's all.
I think I need to take you into vacation.
That's all. That's that.
No?
That's
Why not?
Here's my proposal.
Look here. I need something. Work it out. Give me a yard.
Yard?
Yeah, yard. You just come in. A yard, $100. No, man, not out here. Come in the back. Even on the seat, man. Yeah, but I'm stupid Haitian.
Through the story of Everett Jr. and his uncle, that's his uncle, I tried to weave in these realities, right? So I think I I've been talking about painful things, but I still know that you need to make people laugh sometimes. I love laughter, but sometimes I want to use the laughter to set you up, right? And so I talked about underdogs, and that has been a preoccupation of mine in No Seats in Babylon. I looked at the attitudes that we have towards Rastafarians, and that was the moment we were in. Like I wrote that play in like 1990, and then in Diary of Souls, obviously I was looking at our Haitian prejudice, which hasn't gone anywhere. It's still, although I feel sometimes we're a little bit better off. Like in 2024, there are Creole shows on the radio. That wasn't the case 30 years ago, definitely not, right? So, and so there are these signs, but we're still not fundamentally where we ought to be. And then we're in this moment now where we're now confronted with the rest of the what's the word? The inappropriateness of our framework, the inadequacy of our Constitution, which only reflects our own patriarchal culture, right? So the oppression around gender, which is weird, since, you know, it's interesting. I'm pretty sure we're signatories to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says all are equal before the law. We find all sorts of ways to establish some equal, some more equal than others, as Orwell would have put it. So now I'm working on a new project called Honorable Member, which is based on the play. And you know, I won't even pretend as if I am reaching very far from my source material. I'm going to show you a scene, and I'm sure you'll get a sense of the inspiration, but the opportunity to deal with, how would I put it? The punishment inflicted upon a woman who dared aspire to be prime minister in our country. So this is just a little clip from this TV series that I'm working on with Don Sargent. I want to give him his props.
People of Ireland, we may have lost this battle, but we are not discouraged or downcast. We have fought honorably. We shared our visions, our plans. We spoke to our ability, our readiness. And we have faith that in a fair fight, in a democratic process, we would prevail because we represented a new way, a new set of values. But sadly, this was never a fair fight, and it was not a democratic process. Sadly, our opponents felt no such obligation to fight honorably. I am not downcast, but I am deeply, deeply disappointed that a party that I have supported my entire adult life would come up so short, could permit such underhandedness, such vile, vicious, gutless behavior. I would never have believed that delegates could come up to me at a convention and say the disgusting things that have been said to me. I would never have believed that because I aspired to be leader of our country in this party, that I would get death threats in the middle of the night. I would never have believed that I would not be allowed to address the convention before the vote for leader or be denied the actual list of voting delegates. I would never have believed the scurrilous lies spread about me and my husband on social media. Some people will do anything to keep power, but I can hold my head high. I can hold my head high because I know that somewhere in our country, there's a little girl watching this who will grow up. And because of the example of women like me, she will be prime minister of our country. I can hold my head high because even though I wanted to lead, I did not sell my soul to do so.
Yeah. That's Valine role. Yeah, so I think I'm just about done. Just to say that, like I said, I don't know that I hope I'm not trying to send a message that you need to have really bad things happen to you in order to be a good writer. That's not what I'm trying to say. That's not what I believe. I can only speak to my own story though. And what made me sensitive to the things that I became sensitive to and care about the things that I cared about. And I would say too that even living in Jamaica and coming back and seeing anti-Jamaican sentiment confused me. I was like, y'all don't know nothing about Jamaica. I mean, that's such a beautiful place. Those people are so cool. Like, what's wrong with you? You know how many friends my mother has with Jamaican? So, but again, which just goes to show it's about what you're exposed to, right? And so we just, there's so many opportunities that we pass upon as a Caribbean nation. And even that is a problem for some people saying that. But it's certainly been a wonderful, and I'm grateful for the gift and for the journey and for the people who I've been able to walk with, who are also writers, who are also creatives, who are actors and artists. And I hope that what I do is meaningful and good for people, and I hope that it inspires and that people will be ambitious and take on hard projects, take on challenging work, because it's worth it. Even if it is 15 years, even if it's 10 years, it's worth it. Be ambitious, be bold, but most of all, in your own way, try to be prophetic. And don't spare these niggas the truth. Thank you very much. I hope that wasn't too short or too long in the middle. Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. Yes, Sonia. Yes. Well, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, go ahead. No.
Thank you very much for sharing. I thought a lot through the talk about the name of your press,
Saracen.
the Saracen
Saracen
Books.
Books, yeah.
I'm wondering if you can talk about the connection there, if there is one.
Yeah, no, I
There
mean,
is. So it's clearly something you've thought about. For a long
absolutely,
time.
yeah. I mean, and again, I mean, not even, when I came up with that, I mean, it was just that inspiration that this is medicine, this is good for you, this is we own this. You don't gotta go to a pharmacy or a doctor for it. It's so funny because I just helped organize a group of UB folks to go to Ghana, and they had a naming ceremony, and they give them all garlands of Cerasee. So these practices, these medicinal practices, these herbal practices, these African retentions are so important. And I saw it as, and Cerasee Books hasn't become what I might have imagined, but the point is, yes, this is medicine. This is good for you. This is our thing, and that's why I use that name. Yeah, Cerasee Books. Yes. Yeah. No problem.
I guess I had a question around when you were quoting the student earlier about just not sparing people with the truth. I guess I wondered I guess the role of literature and how things are developed, capacity, like the bandwidth or resilience for people to be able to like swallow the truth and to be able to handle it, like from your perspective, how can literature help, or is this more of like, I guess, in the type of
No, you know what I mean, but obviously, right, I take that there are different levels to that. And I think the older I get, the more I understand that part of it. That first of all, it is for your own healing, it's for your own journey, it's for your own growth, it's for your own ability to understand and process the world for yourself, right? So writing is a form of resistance and transcendence and resilience from my vantage point. Even sometimes when I write angry emails to people, I'm trying to make sense of the world, right? So there's that part of it. So earlier, if I was in my 20s, it would have been my ambition. I want to be on the bookshelf. I want to be, a famous writer. But the older I get, and the more you realize you're not going to be on the cover of the New York Times, or you're not going to have your play on Broadway, you're not going to be rich and famous. But you still got to write. You still want to write. You still need to write. So you get to the core of it, that it is in fact who you are. And you need to express yourself in order to be free, in order to be alive. But absolutely, literature is a way of building your capacity, building muscles around emotional intelligence, around compassion, around empathy, around critical thinking, around hopefully democratic ideals and values, right? So I know I experimented on my own children in that way. So like they all have read, I gave them every book that ever changed my way of thinking. Every book that I loved, I gave my son, whether it was To Kill a Mockingbird or Tuck Everlasting, or, that's how I tried to make sure that they would become, and I wasn't just doing it so they could know big words. I wanted them to be people whose eyes were open to the world and the way the world is. You know what I mean? Not so that, YouTube and Nickelodeon isn't, your only reference point for how the world really is. And so absolutely, literature and art are about that. Let me deepen, enrich, increase the saturation on your view of the world. And so I will add this point to that. Right now, literature is not mandatory in the high schools. And there's only one high school where it is, that's St. Augustine's. And I was told by an English instructor that whereas there used to be 1,200 people sitting in the literature exam, now it's a couple hundred. That's deeply problematic. And so teachers are shying away from it. They're scheduling it at times when they have other core subjects that they have to take. And so you're marginalizing this real powerful brain tool, intelligence tool that would help you create more thoughtful students, more aware of the interior life, more able to find language for what they experience. So, well, what good is it, Strachan? It's not math and it's not biology. Yeah, but hold on a minute, wait a minute. It's thinking. It's human thought, it's human experience, understanding it. And so I definitely think we need a campaign around that, joining hands with the Ministry of Education around what are the hurdles, why are they discouraged, and why are they avoiding it? How can we make it something that their teachers are, I'm assuming here, less intimidated by? They want success, they want good grades, and so they're avoiding it. That's what I think. But I think that's a terrible mistake nationally. And I feel the same way about the fact that history isn't required. So to me, these are big like macro mistakes we're making. We just want to produce generations of people who just don't know and don't know how, which is I think a terrible mistake. And definitely I think the university professors should be active in trying to engage with education on that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. It's all right. Yeah, I mean, casual. It's all good. Yeah.
pain wakes you up and pleasure puts you to sleep. in this world where we are bombarded with the pleasures of social media, TikTok, entertainment nightlife, right? Things to distract us from the pain. How do you, as an artist, find ways to sit with that pain and then also be comfortable with sharing that? And the reason why I ask is because specifically as a poet, I've also been coming to the point where it's painful to sit in pain. And also at the same time, I'm like, is this TMI for the audience?
Yeah. Well, I had a moment today where I was like, you really gonna talk about all this stuff with these, these people? Are you really gonna open up about these things, right? But I'm glad I did it, right? So there's a couple of different ways I could answer that. Generally speaking, I believe that I'm reading this book now called The Myth of Normal. It's really cool. I just started. I'm only 3 pages in, but I love it. That we're all on a trauma spectrum. All humans are on a trauma spectrum. It's impossible to go through your life and not have tragedy and pain. It's inevitable. It's part of the way this whole thing works, right? You're gonna lose people. You're gonna get disappointed. You're gonna be heartbroken. You're not gonna achieve all your dreams, etc. And sometimes even the achieving of your dream isn't what you thought it would be, and that turns into a damn nightmare. So there's the whole thing is rigged for you to suffer, right? So, but the problem is, of course, being willing to feel it and then having the tools to process it and find healing ways to move on, right? Which is a problem for the culture, as you point out, for Western culture. It's a problem. And then we don't help it because the educational system doesn't spend any time on those things. So, I was in school, I was head boy, I had best grades, but I was emotionally retarded. I had no preparation. Okay, I didn't know how to deal with any real life situation, right? I knew what protozoa were or whatever, you know what I'm saying? That's what I mean. Like, we're not using the opportunity to talk about the structure of the human personality, the nature of the whole range of human experience and how you deal with adversity and and of course, social media makes things worse because of all the comparing and the faking and posing that goes on, right? We know the damage it's causing based on studies in the United States. The shaming, the suicides, all sorts of crazy stuff happening, right? But I would say that I guess I never really like writing these poems at you see how deeply they're kind of deeply personal. These are not, I'm not trying to save the world in them. I'm just trying to grieve in them and honor people I love in them. So, and I don't read them very often. So there's this, I just had a faith that I needed to write and that it would be good to write. And it would be, something would be sacred about honoring my loved ones in this way. And that's something I hope that young people know is an option. I know I try with my own sons to encourage them to journal. They like to draw, make cartoons about it, just, and feel free to cry and say what you feel, etc., to get away from all the bullshit of masculinity. But I would say this, that I don't see a difference between writing truthfully and understanding your own truth in your own life, your own journey, right? There's a mentor of mine, I call him Uncle Haldane. I call Haldane and Felix uncles because they were professors here when I was a kid. And Haldane read my novel, God's Angry Baby. She's like, yeah, it's all right, but you can tell you haven't really lived a lot, right? And I was like 23, 24, 25 when I wrote it. He was right? So there's this beauty in being a writer that you should get better the older you become. You should get stronger the older you become because you're living more, you're learning more, you're failing, you're picking yourself back up. Your experiences should make you finer like wine, but you've got to do the work of actually coming to understand it. And there are things about your own journey that you can't understand on your own. That's just the nature of it. You actually need someone to help you see yourself. They call them therapists. I encourage it. Right? So that's something that, as I started talking about hating my own father. So when you're 18, you hate your father. When you're 35, you wake up and you are your father. You got to revisit, you got to rethink, right? Some of the things that you do. So, and why you did it, and how you got there. So I think writers should be committed to coming to understand their own story, because that's the well out of which you will write other stories, right? And of course, we also have to be observers, right? That's one of the beautiful things, one of the things that I think I always enjoy people watching, but there's also understanding and going back and sifting through your own choices and decisions, the bad, the good, the painful things where you didn't really act that admirably, the things where you didn't have the words that you should have had for the person who said something really mean to you. And so, like, there's no doubt in my mind, I couldn't write Blind Days when I was 25. Couldn't possibly, right? So, yeah, I think sitting with pain is just hard anyway, because, and this is the way the human psyche works, you're afraid of the pain of dealing with your pain, so you dose yourself with pleasure, and the cycle brings you back to actually deeper pain. So I think Barry, and then, yeah, Barry, go ahead.
Stand up there, open and vulnerable, and just sort of embody, these rich emotions that are connected to your works. And so it really got me to thinking about how we as lecturers or professors to inspire our students that come to our classrooms and that sort of thing, because this sort of like disconnect and disillusionment with like reading and writing and that sort of thing, right? And so I just wanted to know what advice you might be able to lend, or what things did you do in the classroom to like sort of like really connect your students with the task of reading and writing, and the importance of their emotions connected to it.
Well, first of all, like, I'm teaching now again for the first time in a couple of years. I took some time off to finish the book, and I'm hating it. I'm hating it because I'm doing it virtually, and I don't ever want to do it again. When I taught you and Emil and others, we were face to face. So the human energy and Crystal, the human energy, the performance element of it, the interaction, the call and response, that's vital, right? So, like, I always felt like, you know what, in the course of a 14-week semester, I'm probably not going to make you a better writer. I'm probably not, because you've learned these things and your brain works a certain way, and I'm not going to undo 12 years of schooling and all your life's language exposure in 14 weeks. So I must have another mission, right? And so my other mission was cultural work. I am going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge your values, your beliefs. I'm going to expose you to new ideas. I'm going to try to rattle you and make you question your assumptions. I'm going to do cultural work in this classroom. Yes, we're going to write, and I'm going to grade your writing. And, no, that subject and verb don't agree. And this is not a full sentence. We can do all of that stuff. But more importantly, my goal is 10 years from now, you won't remember, hopefully you won't care whether you got a C- or a B+, but you remember that, you know what? In that book, we read that particular novel. That was lit. That was cool. Right? Strachan made us watch this movie. And I was like, this is a crazy man. What did we watching this in class? You know what I mean? So that is how I think we have got to be nonconformists. We have got to challenge them. We have also have to make it a safe, democratic space where anybody could say whatever they want. Doesn't mean you get to say bullshit. If you do, then you get called out. But there's a way to call people out so they know that you actually love them and you want to but you're garbage. You know what I mean? You don't make humiliate people and make them feel, no, everybody. So to me, I'm a good teacher. If I fail you, but you still say, that dude's a good teacher, I can try him again next semester, right? So and that to me, that's about connecting with people on the level of the real. Because if the classroom is fake, you don't expect people to come into it and invest anything, right? So they should come to this classroom and be like, what this dude could talk about this week, right? So, right? And then too, I'll be honest, I'm the kind of person who's forced people to read. I will make people read in class. We'll read out loud as a group. I will find ways. It's harder now. It's so much harder now with social media and the cell phones and all the rest of it, and 24 hours of TV and all the rest of it. But I mean, that is the mission. But most importantly, I believe it is a cultural work that we're doing. My goal is, how do I engage this citizen and get them to think about their reality and challenge them to be more democratic, more progressive, more critical, more curious, more informed than they were when they came in. So this is about life. And so the things I curate for you to read are going to make it all about life. Because if it doesn't, I don't know why I would waste my time teaching it. You got to go to another class. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Hope that answers your question. Yeah, Craig?
Okay. Dr. Strachan.
Yes.
So like Barry, I want to thank you for, being so vulnerable with the first part of your talk. A lot of it resonated with me in terms of, relationship with fathers.
Yeah.
Even going to Jamaica, mother with 5 kids, a little bit of violence and so on, not to that extent, but
Right. Yeah,
sibling stuff.
yeah.
So I'm wondering, and I know you say that, the emotional, personal stuff, you do the poetry, the political stuff, you do in the long form, but there's a way where the personal can be political.
Sure.
And so I'm just thinking about, for me, what connects me is your relationship with your father. And I'm wondering if there's a chance that you will do anything in long form with that.
Yeah, I've been thinking, because when I wrote God's On You Babies, a lot of it was autobiographical. So it was infused in the political satire, really was my family story, right? My mother's story, my brother Winston's story of his addiction and so on, along with all the other bits and pieces. But yeah, I think so. I think I will probably try to do some sort of memoir. Yeah, I think so. Right. So my father lost his mother as a boy. And his father, my grandfather, Milo Strachan, was hard, very hard on him. And then my grandfather married the maid. It's gonna, can I say FUC kid? That's gonna screw with you, right? So and as I look at it, he was just a very socially awkward person. So what I try to capture in that poem, and even when my brother Winston died, he came to the house and he was just weeping. And he sat on the couch there and we were just staring at him. We were just like speechless. You know what I mean? And it's so funny because he came to the house one time and he wanted to see me. He come on Sundays and I didn't want to come out and see him. And he started raising his voice. And I came at this time, by that time, Winston was dying. And I came out and I was like, look, I don't love you. What you want to see me for? You know who wants to see you? Who need a father? Your oldest son. You have the guts to go down there and talk to him? Of course he didn't, right? But that's the same man who wept bitterly when that son died. The same son who threatened to kill him if he touches his mom one more time. So, people are, it's complicated. It's complicated. He ain't the devil. He's just a human, right? And but you have to be old enough to understand that and understand too that as much as I love my mother, she didn't share one good story. Like there was no good stories. You can tell by his mind, only bad ones, you know what I mean? So, you know, those things are all a part of it. But definitely, I think so. I would like to try that. And again, I'm in a place where I could do it now because I have my own family and my own sons. And yeah. Yes.
So,
Mhm.
I question our commitment to collectively handle audit to solve the truth. Almost every day in this country.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's very difficult for me to sit in spaces, because a lot of times I feel like there's a lot of taking and pandering going on, right?
Mhm.
And I'm being honest, like, because I'm tired, I'm fed up, right?
Mhm.
And I want to be honest about it, right?
Mhm.
That may be my position, but that's because the state of our country, then, like, I've not lived anywhere else. So for me, the country should be reflecting, you know, something that we can, like, from my vantage point, it should be a space where we can take advantage of the resources to better our lives. And we talked about how that, like, things are not great here. It's not paradise. We're not equal. And for me, the sense of urgency bothers me a lot, right? I think about, James Harlan, what he talks about in the Bahamas Supreme Court. He talks about how we often, he noted it in the education system, but I think it's just pervasive, where we prioritize our personal relationships over the productivity of the country or the nation itself. Meaning that if telling the truth is gonna hurt a relationship, then we're gonna opt to
Yeah.
not tell the truth because
Yeah.
it's gonna offend my
Yeah.
brother, sister, auntie, cousin.
Yeah. I got you.
Right? And so, when you live in spaces like that, and we know this the degrees of separation are not like New York or another major big metropolitan city. But when you live in a space like that, it's very difficult, because I think, you know, don't like intellectuals, but we really dislike the truth, right? And I don't believe the truth harms in any way, right? Because we live in a world of illusions and lies. That's all capitalism is doing, that's reproducing that world. So telling the truth means you have some level to reproduce, and maybe affects of freedom to continue on to the pathway. So I say all this because even when it comes to talking about the work as artists, right? I think that we're often not truthful in that. And it bothers me because I can see it. I'm that sensitive to it, right? For example, I think today, somebody said that I struggle with because, and we said about the Osama being the North Star, right? And I was like, no, hell no. And it's not because the Osama is not a great historian, but like she has to be open to critique. And if you're not willing to critique her, then I have to side eye you as an artist.
Yeah.
Because you're holding her and the relationship you have with her over the productivity of the nation and where we need to go.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess if you would talk to that or maybe, you know, speak to that.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
let me put it this way. One of the things that's interesting about our history telling, I think people maybe don't understand, some might not understand that historiography is it's its own form of creativity, right? That people can only tell truths that they're comfortable with themselves, that there is certain narratives they may feel are too explosive to, you know, the implications that they you know what I mean? So there is a potential, and I think certainly for someone like Gail, God rest her soul, who was an institutional creator, right? And who was groundbreaking. There was definitely that sense of she's a product of a generation. And there are things that, for instance, I actually think I think she waited until that her most important book is the very last one she did, where she talks about color in class, she didn't really do earlier. And that was a part of her story. She lived some of that, she lived that. She went to Queen's College. She lived that, she's of the lighter complexion, right? So, but I think there's no way of getting around critique, and that's what the generations will do, and that's what the readers will do. And I don't think you have to allow for that. Some will celebrate. I remember when I wrote my book, Paradise and Plantation, and I was critical of Walcott. And one of the readers just lost his mind. Like, how dare you criticize the Son of God? You know what I mean? It came after my throat because I wanted to talk about gender politics and some other things in Walcott's work. And I ain't coming up half as hard as some others have been at Walcott. Right? So there's going to be that. There's going to be where some people feel like there are sacred cows. It's early still, in the journey, but definitely the storytelling is political. What's interesting is that now this history text that's coming out, I have a chapter in it, it's going to be the first time we're talking about politics post-73. It's been 50 years, 50 years. Right? If it wasn't for the couple of memoirs and biographies, you wouldn't have anything. So, I tell you, man, these gaps, these silences in this country, it is amazing. The things that we let go, we just let them go cold. Just, you know what I mean? So, but I would just encourage you to pace yourself, get off this rock, go live somewhere else for a while, and to write, and to write from your critical vantage point, which will be prophetic, inevitably.
Hey, so I know I said one more, but I didn't check the Skype. Zoom, sorry.
Sure.
So there is a
Question?
question. Saskia first says to piggyback on my question. She thanks you for sharing some of your life story and motivation for writing as well as your work. She's wondering, as you pursue so many creative outlets, if you have a preferred medium and or why you chose to write Blind Days as a novel, for example, and not a play.
Yeah. Well, I think Peter pointed it out in his introduction. The play is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So the stage is my favorite because there's no separation between me and the people I'm writing for. They're alive and they're in the seat in the moment. And I can hear them laugh. I can see them, be uncomfortable and shift in their seat. And I can talk to them afterward. It's perfect for it's total gratification. It is that dynamic. And so I love the theater most of all. But I wanted the challenge of the novel because it travels differently as a form. And so I wanted to do a better job of conquering it, and then I wanted this to be able to travel in that way. I have every intention of turning it into a stage production, and hopefully, if I live long enough, I'll turn it into a film. So this is Senegalese artist. I think he's Senegalese, Sembène Ousmane. He's either Senegal or Mali. I can't remember which one. Senegal, yeah. So every novel he wrote turned into a film. So, I want this story to exist in those different media, but I wanted to write for my own gratification. I wanted the challenge of writing a novel, and I wanted the novel because of how it could travel. Because you really, the stage play is this live thing, and then, it's gone. So, yeah. So that's the form I wanted for this. And because it's so textual, right? Playing with historical text, what I invent, what I decide is a lie and not a lie, and where do I where does this text stop and where do I begin in terms of what's true or whatever. I just like the layers that the novel form allow you. Because when I do turn it into a play, a lot of that is gonna be gone. You won't have those nuances to play with, right? So I like the fact that, okay, this is a record now, right? Another record to go alongside those other records, right? Of what this woman went through. So I like that element of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Strachan, for closing off our first day.
Thank you very much, and I'm so happy I didn't cry.
I am
I was
too.
worried a couple times. I know it would have been totally like inappropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, please join us. We have some refreshments in the back. We can continue conversations in the back. Also, if you're online, if in the room, remember tomorrow we have workshops starting at 10 a.m. We have trauma, writing through trauma workshops. We have spoken word. We have writing the short fiction. We have playwriting. We have an acting workshop. What else? Writing for film workshops. So all free throughout the day tomorrow, basically in building F and room 7 and 8. If you have more questions, please let me know, but come eat some food. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, sure.